The autumn wind rustled through the leaves on the school playground. Emma Matthews gathered her teaching materials after another long day at Roosevelt Middle School. The setting sun cast long shadows across the empty basketball court. She needed to hurry. Her 6-year-old daughter Lily would be waiting at the after-school program. As she walked across the playground, something caught her eye. A man in a business suit lay motionless near the bleachers. Emma's heart raced as she ran toward him, her heels clicking against the pavement. "Sir? Sir, can you hear me?" she called out, kneeling beside him. The man's face was pale, his breathing shallow. Emma quickly checked his pulse while dialing 911 with trembling fingers. "Stay with me," she whispered, loosening his tie and placing her jacket under his head. His expensive watch glinted in the fading sunlight as she monitored his breathing. The ambulance's sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing moment. Emma stayed beside him, her hand steady on his wrist, counting each heartbeat. She learned basic first aid when Lily was born, never expecting to use it like this. The paramedics arrived within minutes, their swift movements professional and precise. "He appears to have collapsed," Emma explained, standing back to give them room. "Possible cardiac event," one paramedic noted, attaching monitoring equipment. Emma watched as they loaded him into the ambulance, his face now covered with an oxygen mask. "Would you like to come with him?" a paramedic asked. Emma glanced at her watch, thinking of Lily. "I can't," she said reluctantly. "But please make sure he's okay." She handed them the man's fallen briefcase, its leather surface smooth and expensive. The name tag read James Anderson, Anderson Publishing House. As the ambulance drove away, Emma realized she was now late picking up Lily. She hurried to her old Honda, praying the after-school program wouldn't charge extra today. Every dollar mattered when you were a single mom on a teacher's salary. 15 minutes later, she found Lily sitting alone in the classroom, drawing pictures. "Mommy!" Lily jumped up, her blonde pigtails bouncing. "You're late." "I'm so sorry, sweetie." Emma hugged her daughter tight. Something important came up. "More important than me?" Lily pouted, her blue eyes questioning. Emma's heart squeezed. "Nothing's more important than you, honey. I had to help someone who was sick." On the drive home, Lily chatted about her day, but Emma's mind kept drifting back to the man. She hoped he would be all right, whoever he was. Their small apartment welcomed them with familiar comfort. While Lily worked on her homework, Emma prepared a simple dinner of mac and cheese. It wasn't fancy, but it was Lily's favorite. Later that night, after tucking Lily into bed, Emma sat at her small desk. She pulled out her worn notebook, filled with children's stories she'd written over the years. Teaching middle school English paid the bills, but writing was her passion. She'd always dreamed of publishing her stories someday. But dreams had to wait when reality demanded attention. The man's pale face flashed in her mind again. She said a quiet prayer for his recovery before turning off the light. Tomorrow would be another busy day of teaching, parenting, and keeping their little world turning. Little did Emma know that her simple act of kindness would set in motion changes that would transform her life forever. In the quiet hospital across town, James Anderson opened his eyes, wondering about the angel who had saved him. James Anderson sat in his corner office at Anderson Publishing House, staring at the city skyline. 2 weeks had passed since his collapse at Roosevelt Middle School. The doctors called it a wake-up call, severe exhaustion combined with stress. "Mr. Anderson, I have the information you requested." His assistant Sarah walked in with a folder. His eyes scanned the pages quickly. Emma Matthews, 32, English teacher, single mother. Sarah had done thorough research, even finding copies of the school newspaper. "She runs the Creative Writing Club," Sarah pointed out. "The students love her stories." James leaned back in his chair, remembering the gentle voice that had kept him conscious. "What about her writing?" he asked, recalling the briefcase contents he'd examined. Sarah pulled out several photocopied pages from the school literary magazine. "She writes children's stories, quite good ones actually." Sarah handed them over. James read through them, his publisher's eye catching the natural talent in her words. A plan began forming in his mind. "Send out a call for submissions," he instructed Sarah. "Children's books, specifically fairy tales." "Should I target the school specifically?" Sarah asked, understanding his intention. James nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. Make sure she sees it, he added. But don't make it obvious. The next day, Emma found a colorful flyer in her school mailbox. Anderson Publishing House announces children's book contest, the headline read. Her heart skipped a beat as she read the details. The winner would receive a publishing contract and mentorship program. During lunch break, she pulled out her notebook, filled with stories she'd written for Lily. You should enter, her colleague Rachel encouraged, peering at the stories. I don't know, Emma hesitated. These big publishing houses rarely notice newcomers. But that night, as she watched Lily sleep, she made her decision. She stayed up late, polishing her best story about a brave little star. It was Lily's favorite, the one she always requested at bedtime. 2 weeks later, Sarah placed Emma's manuscript on James's desk. It's even better than her school publications, Sarah commented. James spent the evening reading it, making notes in the margins. The story was rough around the edges, but filled with heart and authentic emotion. He picked up his phone and called the head of the children's division. I want to set up a meeting with Emma Matthews, he said, but not as the CEO. What's your plan? His colleague asked, intrigued. Tell her she's been selected for preliminary review. I'll pose as a senior editor. The next morning, Emma received an email that made her hands shake. Anderson Publishing House wanted to meet with her. She read the email 5 times, hardly daring to believe it. Mommy, why are you crying? Lily asked, climbing into her lap. Happy tears, sweetie. Emma hugged her daughter. Sometimes dreams start to come true. She had no idea that across town, James Anderson was planning each detail carefully. He wanted to help her talent bloom, but more than that, he wanted to know the woman who had saved his life. Sarah, clear my schedule for next Tuesday afternoon, he instructed. And remember, I'm just Mark Wilson, senior editor, when she comes in. Sarah nodded, admiring how her boss had orchestrated everything. Sometimes, she thought, fate needed a little push in the right direction. Emma stood before the mirror in her small bathroom, adjusting her only business suit. The navy fabric had faded slightly from years of use, but it was still her best option. Her hands trembled as she applied a touch of lipstick. Mommy, you look pretty, Lily called from the doorway, still in her pajamas. Thanks, sweetie. Are you ready for Mrs. Rodriguez to watch you after school? The babysitter was an extra expense, but this meeting was too important to miss. The Anderson Publishing House building towered over downtown, all glass and steel. Emma's reflection into revolving doors showed her nervous expression. The security guard directed her to the 11th floor with a friendly smile. Her heels sank into plush carpet as she entered the children's division. Ms. Matthews, Sarah greeted her warmly. Mr. Wilson will see you now. Emma followed her through a maze of cubicles to a corner office. James, dressed casually in a sweater and slacks, stood to greet her. He'd deliberately chosen clothes different from his usual CEO attire. Emma Matthews, he smiled, extending his hand. I'm Mark Wilson. Please have a seat. Emma sat down, her manuscript folder clutched tightly in her lap. She didn't recognize him from that day on the playground. The oxygen mask and her panic had obscured his features in her memory. Your story about the brave little star is quite impressive, James began. Really? Emma's eyes lit up with hope. The emotion feels very authentic, he continued, opening her manuscript. I wrote it for my daughter, Emma explained. She loves bedtime stories. James leaned forward, genuinely interested. Tell me more about your inspiration. For the next hour, they discussed story structure, character development, and Emma's writing process. Emma found herself relaxing as they talked about books they both loved. Have you written other stories? James asked, though he already knew the answer. Dozens, Emma admitted. I write them for my students too. James made a note on his pad. Would you be interested in developing a series? Emma's heart skipped a beat. A series? You mean multiple books? With the right guidance. I believe your work has significant potential. He outlined a mentorship program, watching her eyes grow wider with each detail. Of course, you'll need to meet with me regularly to refine your manuscripts. I'd love to, but Emma hesitated. I have my teaching schedule and my daughter. We can work around your schedule, James assured her, including weekends if necessary. Relief flooded Emma's face. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. This opportunity means everything. As she left the office, James watched her go, feeling strangely protective. Sarah entered after Emma had departed. She didn't recognize you. No, James smiled. But she will eventually. Over the next few weeks, Emma and James met regularly to work on her stories. Sometimes at coffee shops, sometimes at the local library. Lily often came along, drawing pictures while they discussed plot points. The little girl took an immediate liking to Mr. Wilson. He always brought her new books and listened to her elaborate 6-year-old stories. Emma noticed how patient he was with Lily, how genuinely interested in her daughter's thoughts. It was different from her ex-husband, who had always seen Lily as an inconvenience. One Saturday afternoon, they worked in the park while Lily played nearby. "You're very good with her," Emma commented, watching James push Lily on the swings. "Children have the best imaginations," he replied. "They see magic everywhere." Emma felt something warm stir in her heart, but quickly pushed it aside. She couldn't afford to develop feelings, not when her career finally had a chance. But as James walked them to their car, carrying a tired Lily, Emma couldn't help wondering. Maybe sometimes life gave you a second chance at trust. Maybe sometimes people weren't too good to be true. If only she knew just how connected their paths already were. Spring had arrived at Roosevelt Middle School, bringing fresh challenges. Whispers followed Emma through the hallways during her morning classes. "Did you hear? She's getting special treatment from Anderson Publishing. I heard she knows someone high up in the company." Rachel caught up with Emma at lunch, concern written on her face. "Emma, you need to see this." She handed over her tablet. The screen showed the Anderson Publishing House website. There was James's photo, not as Mark Wilson, but as CEO James Anderson. Emma's coffee cup slipped from her fingers, spilling across the teacher's lounge table. That's Mark," she whispered, staring at the image. Memories flooded back. The man on the playground, the ambulance, the expensive suit. Her hands began to shake as the pieces fell into place. "I saved his life," she said quietly. "And he never told me." Rachel's eyes widened. "What do you mean you saved his life?" Emma explained everything, the collapse, the ambulance, the publishing contest. "So this whole mentorship thing," Rachel began. "Was it all just payback?" Emma felt sick to her stomach. She thought about all their meetings, his kindness to Lily, the growing feelings she'd tried to ignore. Had it all been orchestrated out of obligation? The rest of the school day passed in a blur. Emma canceled her afternoon meeting with Mark, claiming illness. That evening, as Lily did her homework, Emma paced their small living room. Her phone buzzed with messages from James, but she couldn't bring herself to respond. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. James stood in the hallway, concern etched on his face. "Emma, please. Let me explain." Lily ran to the door. "Mr. Wilson, did you bring new books?" "Not today, sweetheart," he said gently. "I need to talk to your mom." Emma sent Lily to her room to finish homework. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, arms crossed. James stepped into the apartment, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "I wanted to help you without making you feel obligated. So, instead you lied? Pretended to be someone else?" "I never lied about who I am," he insisted. "Only my position. You're the CEO of Anderson Publishing, not some editor." "Yes, but everything else was real. My interest in your writing, our conversations, my feelings." Emma held up her hand. "Your feelings? Emma, you didn't just save my life that day. You showed me what really matters." He took a step closer, but she backed away. "People at school are talking. They think I got this opportunity through connections. Your work earned this chance, Emma. Read the reviews from other editors." He pulled out a folder filled with glowing comments about her manuscripts. "I only opened the door. Your talent did the rest." Emma sank onto the couch, emotional exhaustion taking over. "I don't know what to believe anymore." "Believe in yourself," James said softly. "The way I do." "Mommy." Lily appeared in the doorway. "Are you mad at Mr. Wilson?" Emma looked at her daughter's worried face. "No, sweetie. We're just having a grown-up talk." "But you look sad." Lily climbed onto the couch between them. James watched as Emma hugged her daughter close. "Sometimes grown-ups need to be honest with each other," he explained to Lily. "Like when I broke your favorite coffee mug and told you." Lily asked Emma. Despite everything, Emma couldn't help but laugh. Yes, exactly like that. James reached for Emma's hand across the couch. I'm sorry I wasn't completely honest. Please don't let my mistake ruin your dream. Emma looked at their joined hands, then at Lily, who was watching them hopefully. I need time, she finally said, to think about everything. James nodded, standing slowly. I understand. But Emma, she looked up at him. I meant every word I said about your stories. And about you. After he left, Emma held Lily close, breathing in her daughter's familiar scent. I like Mr. Wilson, Lily said sleepily. He makes you smile? Emma kissed her daughter's head, wondering when life had become so complicated. Outside, James sat in his car, remembering the day she'd saved him. He'd never meant to fall in love with her. But sometimes the heart makes plans of its own. A week had passed since James revealed his true identity. Emma threw herself into teaching, trying to avoid thinking about him. But his absence left a strange emptiness in both her and Lily's lives. When is Mr. Wilson coming back? Lily asked every evening. Emma never knew quite how to answer. Then one morning, everything changed. Emma was preparing for her first class when the school secretary called. There's someone here to see you, she said. Says he's Lily's father. Emma's blood ran cold. David Mitchell stood in the school office, wearing an expensive suit. 6 years had passed since he'd walked out on them. Hello, Emma, he smiled confidently. You look good. What are you doing here, David? Can't a father visit his daughter's school? Emma's hands clenched into fists. You gave up that right long ago. Things change, he shrugged. I heard about your book deal with Anderson Publishing. Of course, it was always about money with David. I want to be part of Lily's life again, he announced. After 6 years of complete silence, I'm different now. Successful. I can provide for her. Emma laughed bitterly. Like you provided when I was pregnant? I'm filing for joint custody, he declared. The world seemed to tilt beneath Emma's feet. You can't do this. My lawyers disagree, he smirked. See you in court. Emma watched him leave, panic rising in her chest. She couldn't lose Lily. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. James answered on the first ring. Emma, are you okay? I need help, her voice cracked. Please. 20 minutes later, James rushed into the school. He found Emma in her classroom, tears streaming down her face. Without hesitation, he wrapped her in his arms. Tell me what happened. Emma explained about David's sudden appearance and threats. He abandoned us before Lily was even born. Now he wants custody because he thinks I have money. James's jaw tightened. He won't get near her. How can you be sure? Because I'm calling the best family lawyer in New York right now. Emma pulled back slightly. James, I can't afford Dash. Let me help, he interrupted. Please. Why? Because I love you both. The words hung in the air between them. Emma stared at him, seeing the truth in his eyes. I know I messed up by not telling you everything, he continued. But my feelings for you and Lily are real. I won't let anyone hurt either of you. Before Emma could respond, her phone buzzed. David had already filed the custody papers. How fast can he do this? She whispered. James pulled out his own phone. Not as fast as us. Within hours, James's lawyer arrived at the school. Patricia Chin was sharp, focused, and immediately reassuring. 6 years of no contact? No child support? He doesn't have a case. But he has money now. Emma worried. Money isn't everything in family court, Patricia explained. We have documentation of abandonment, your consistent care, and Lily's stability. And we have something else, James added. He pulled out a folder. I had my team investigate David Mitchell. The folder contained evidence of David's questionable business practices. He's trying to exploit your potential success, Patricia confirmed. We won't let that happen. Emma looked between James and Patricia, feeling hope return. Thank you, she said softly, reaching for James's hand. He squeezed her fingers gently. Always. That evening, Emma watched Lily playing in their living room. James sat beside her on the couch, their shoulders touching. I'm sorry I pushed you away, Emma said quietly. I understand why you did. When David left, I promised myself I'd never trust easily again. But you're nothing like him. James turned to face her. Emma, you didn't have to help me today. Yes, I did. Because that's what you do when you love someone. This time, When he said love, Emma didn't look away. Instead, she leaned closer and kissed him softly. When they parted, both were smiling. You kissing? Lily giggled from across the room. They laughed, breaking the tension. Come here, silly girl, Emma called. Lily ran over, jumping onto both their laps. Are you and Mr. Wilson going to get married? James choked on air, while Emma blushed bright red. One step at a time, sweetheart, James managed to say. But his eyes met Emma's with a promise for the future. Outside, spring rain began to fall. But inside, their small apartment felt warmer than ever. The family court building loomed before them on a bright Monday morning. Emma gripped James's hand tightly as they climbed the stone steps. Patricia Chen met them at the entrance, briefcase in hand. Remember what we discussed, she said. Stay calm, no matter what he says. Inside the courtroom, David sat with his expensive legal team. He smirked when he saw Emma and James together. Playing happy families already? He muttered as they passed. James tensed, but Emma squeezed his hand. He's not worth it. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. David's lawyer painted him as a changed man, successful and stable. My client has built a thriving business. He can provide Lily with every advantage. Then came the accusations Emma had feared. Ms. Matthews has been receiving special treatment from Anderson Publishing. Her relationship with the CEO raises questions about her priorities. Emma felt her face burn with anger and shame. But James sat tall beside her, his presence steady and strong. When Patricia rose to speak, her voice was sharp and clear. She presented years of documented abandonment, bank statements showing no child support payments, school records proving Emma's dedicated care of Lily. And now, Your Honor, Mr. Mitchell's true motives. Patricia revealed evidence of David's failing business. His company was on the verge of bankruptcy. He had massive debts hidden from his investors. He's not seeking custody out of love, but financial opportunity. David's face turned pale as his lies unraveled. The judge reviewed the documents carefully. Mr. Mitchell, this court takes a very dim view of using children for financial gain. Emma held her breath as the judge continued. Full custody remains with Ms. Matthews. Petition denied. Relief flooded through Emma's body. David stormed out of the courtroom, his lawyers trailing behind. It's over, James whispered, holding her close. Emma couldn't stop the tears of joy. Later that afternoon, they picked up Lily from school together. Is the bad man gone? Lily asked, surprising them both. You knew about him? Emma asked gently. I heard you crying at night, Mommy. Emma hugged her daughter tight. Yes, baby. He's gone. Good, Lily declared. Because we're happy with Mr. Wilson. James knelt down to Lily's level. Can I tell you a secret? Lily nodded eagerly. I'm happiest when I'm with you and your mom. Then you should stay forever, Lily said with 6-year-old logic. James glanced at Emma, his eyes full of meaning. Actually, he reached into his pocket. I was hoping the same thing. Emma's heart stopped as he pulled out a small velvet box. I was going to wait for a more romantic moment. But Lily's right. I want to stay forever. He opened the box, revealing a delicate diamond ring. Emma Matthews, will you marry me? Lily bounced excitedly. Say yes, Mommy. Through happy tears, Emma nodded. Yes. James slipped the ring on her finger with shaking hands. Lily clapped and hugged them both. Other parents and teachers gathered around, applauding. Rachel appeared with her phone, having captured the whole moment. About time, she called out, making everyone laugh. That evening, they celebrated at Emma's apartment. Lily insisted on making paper decorations. James helped her hang them everywhere. Emma watched them, her heart full of love. This was what family should feel like. What are you thinking? James asked, joining her on the couch. That sometimes fairy tales do come true. He smiled. Speaking of which, your book launches next month. I still can't believe it's really happening. Believe it. You did this, Emma. All of it. She leaned against him, feeling perfectly content. We did it together. Outside, the sun set on another spring day. But inside, their future was just beginning to dawn. The bookstore was packed with excited children and their parents. Emma's hands trembled as she looked at her book displayed in the window. The brave little star shimmered in golden letters on the cover. Lily bounced beside her, wearing her favorite party dress. Look, Mommy, that's our story. James stood nearby, beaming with pride. Ready? He asked, offering his hand. Emma took a deep breath and nodded. The store manager introduced her to the waiting crowd. Please welcome our new author, Emma Matthews. As Emma began reading her story, the children sat spellbound. She wrote this tale on nights when Lily couldn't sleep. Now it was touching other families, creating new bedtime memories. After the reading, parents lined up for signed copies. My daughter loves your story, one mother said warmly. It helped her overcome her fear of the dark. Lily helped hand out star-shaped cookies to the young readers. James watched from the side, his heart full of love. 2 months had passed since his proposal. Tomorrow would be their wedding day. They had chosen a simple ceremony in the school garden. Where their story began, it would begin a new chapter. Later that evening, back at their new home, Lily was overexcited. Can I stay up late? It's a special day. The wedding's tomorrow, sweetie, Emma laughed. You need your rest. James tucked her in while Emma finished some last-minute details. Tell me a story, Lily requested sleepily. Once upon a time, James began, there was a brave teacher who saved a prince. Lily added, giggling. That's right, and he fell in love with her kind heart. By the time Emma came in, Lily was fast asleep. Nervous about tomorrow? James asked softly. No, Emma smiled. For the first time, I'm completely sure. The next morning dawned bright and clear. The school garden bloomed with spring flowers. Students had helped decorate the archway with twinkling lights. Rachel helped Emma into her simple white dress. You look like a fairy tale princess, Lily declared. She wore a matching flower girl dress, practicing her walk. The ceremony was small but perfect. Emma's students formed a choir, singing as she walked down the aisle. James waited under the archway, eyes shining with tears. When Lily joined their hands together, everyone smiled. I never thought I'd find love again, Emma said in her vows. But you showed me that sometimes life gives second chances. James's voice shook as he responded. You saved more than my life that day. You showed me what really matters. Love, family, and believing in magic. As they kissed, Lily threw flower petals in the air. The school bell rang in the distance. It seemed to celebrate with them. At the reception, Emma danced with her new husband. Happy, he asked, holding her close. More than I ever dreamed possible. Lily ran up to join them, and James lifted her into their dance. The three of them swayed together, laughing. Later, as the sun set, Emma watched her daughter twirling in the garden. James wrapped his arms around her from behind. What are you thinking about? How different life was a year ago. Any regrets? Emma turned to face him, smiling. Only that I didn't write that story sooner. He kissed her softly. We have plenty of time for more stories. Speaking of which, Emma grinned. I have news. She placed his hand on her stomach. James's eyes widened in surprise and joy. Really? She nodded, happy tears falling. Lily's going to be a big sister. They held each other close as twilight settled over the garden. Sometimes life writes the best stories. Sometimes love finds us when we least expect it. And sometimes fairy tales do come true. The end.